Anesthesiologists of Reddit, what was something you won't forget hearing from someone that was under? Can I tell an Ambien story? It fits the spirit of the question. My mom worked the night shift for 15 years and couldn't sleep during the day, so her doctor prescribed her some Ambien so she could get some rest. I was maybe 12 or so at the time. One day, she poked her head into my room when she should have been sleeping with the most zonked out expression I've ever seen. Just opened my door, stared at me like a zombie, then shuffled away. She must have done the same thing to my little sister, 8, because she came into my room a second later, clearly horrified. We found my mom in the kitchen, sitting on the bench at the table in a daze. I grabbed the camcorder because this was too weird. We tried to get her to go to bed but she refused until we got her a cup of milk. We did, but she didn't drink it, just stared at it. So we helped her up and told her we were taking her to bed. She refused again, and would only agree if she could put on her slippers. Fine. We walked her to her slippers, but she claimed she couldn't wear them because she only had 2 slippers but 4 feet. I told her no, she's got 2 feet like everyone. She got irritated because she could obviously see 4 feet, like a dog, and she wasn't a dog. So we told her to put 2 of her feet in, and go barefoot with her extra feet. She started doing a weird shuffle jump, trying to get both feet into her slippers at the same time. Eventually, we managed to get her to bed. She remembered none of this when she woke up hours later. Luckily I had the whole ordeal on tape, which she refused to watch out of embarrassment. She never took Ambien again. I know someone who painted their kitchen floor red on Ambien. Not very well. They had been painting another room in their house so the paint was accessible. After an operation on a patient's neck, he woke up and yelled "ah," then grabbed his junk with both hands and was like, "oh, thank God it's still there," then immediately passed out again. He clearly had his priorities in order. I had an ovarian cyst removed a year ago and woke up from the anesthesia saying hand please. And making grabby hands with both my hands until the nurses finally came over and held my hands for about 5 minutes while I just smiled and tried to go back to sleep. I hadn't done that in a decade. I used to do it to my dad all the time as a kid to express that I wanted to hold his hand while I slept. Aw, that's so cute. I recently had surgery for endometriosis, and I did the exact same thing. The nurses nicely held my hand before setting it back on the bed once I calmed down. Apparently this lasted for 15 to 20 minutes until I realized they had tucked the stuffed animal I brought under my arm and that I could hold it instead. They put bandages on it in the same place I had them. I'm 24, but because of COVID I had to be alone and a stuffed animal was the best I could do. The rabbit. Oh, I wish I did that for my endosurgery. I guess I'm resistant to anesthesia so I need just a touch more to get me totally under. My doctor told me later on in recovery that I kept trying to get up, very calmly, and kick everyone. Now I know to let any anesthesiologist know to have a little extra juice on hand. My boyfriend at the time had just gotten his wisdom teeth removed. On the ride home with his mouth full of gauze, he gets a call on his cell phone. He answered it and just starts talking away. Whoever it was on the other side could not possibly understand a word he was saying with all the gauze in his mouth. But man, he had a lot to talk about and they apparently didn't hang up. After about 5 minutes of this unintelligible phone conversation he looks at me and says "ooh" with a robot and gives me the phone. I put it to my ear, and the whole time it's been the Walgreens pharmacy automated notice simply stating his prescription is ready for pickup, playing on repeat. Probably for the best. I'm glad I'm not the only one who calls it a robot. I went to the pharmacy once and they asked a question about auto refills or something, to which I casually replied, "Oh, your robot called me." They were very confused, even after I explained what I meant. It's just more fun to call it a robot. I woke up from gallbladder surgery confused as to why my mom wasn't there. I was 18 and looking for my mom. The nurse informed me I had cussed out my entire family and they sent them home and put me on a no visitor list, only for me to wake up at 2 a.m. with no memory making them call my mom back. Another time I woke up and made horrifically inappropriate jokes. I told a nurse she was pissing me off because I didn't like the automatic blood pressure cuff. Another I refused to listen to follow-up orders until I had a chicken sandwich. My negotiations were not met. I'm a real treat after anesthesia but I get a lot of this done at the office my mom works at so she can warn them lol. This is a huge fear of mine. That I'll have surgery and turn into a raging asshole when coming out. I ask a patient after surgery how he feels. He opens his eyes, stares me dead on and says with my fingers. Then he goes right back to sleep. This man has at least 2 kids. Only somewhat related, but my father had to know a lot of defense-related security stuff for his last job, and once after he had surgery the doc said, "Wow, you had some interesting things to say," and to this day he doesn't know if he blabbed something to the doc or if the doc was just joking. The doc saying that really pissed him off. I'm an anesthesiologist. The best story was a 40-some-year-old woman for appendectomy, said while I'm giving the propofol to induce anesthesia. She said, "Oh, I don't remember it tasting like that before," slurred. I said, "What does it taste like?" Since propofol doesn't usually elicit a taste reaction. She almost yelled "D's nuts," and was promptly under anesthesia thereafter. There have been other stories, but this one has the entire staff rolling laughing for minutes after she was under. Priceless Lamau. This was a planned strike. Honestly love hearing that D's nuts jokes transcend generations. My aunt got rushed to the hospital for abnormal heart rate, but it wasn't a heart attack or stroke, but her heart was going at like 200 beats per minute or whatever it was. They had to put her under so they could shock her heart back to normal. As they're taking her under, the doctor says something like "okay," in it goes, and she immediately quips with "that's what she said." All the doctors and nurses busted a gut laughing and told my uncle when he got there. He just shrugged and said, "That's my wife for you." I like your aunt. Woke up from nasal surgery strapped to the bed and a very disgruntled anesthesiologist standing over me. He asked if I was awake now and we talked for a minute. He asked me to do everyone a favor if I ever had surgery again and use the words "wakes combative" when describing how I come out of it. One summer I was home from college and my dad needed me to pick him up after his very first colonoscopy. He was nervous, so I got there early. The nurse called me back and asked me to help wake him up, as they were having some trouble. I go back and am making chit-chat. "Oh Dad, you've got those cool booties on." He raised his head a little bit to look at them, then yelled, "Booty call." He is a Presbyterian pastor. A moment I will treasure forever. Have you told him this, or is it a secret you're hanging on to? First of all, love your name. And yes, I told him when he was more coherent. He doesn't remember it, and honestly I don't think he believes me. My husband had to undergo a colonoscopy, and when he came around he started aggressively grilling the staff about Abraham Lincoln. He isn't a historian or anything, he works as a business analyst and knows next to nothing about Abraham Lincoln. Bonus story, one time he took Ambien and got super fucked up. Initially told me that he couldn't walk up the stairs to bed because he was a transformer and his legs had turned to wheels. Finally got him upstairs and he made the observation that if peach trees could sing to each other like whales it would be beautiful. I bet they would sing Adele. Then he burst into tears. This is beautiful and I unironically love it. One time Aj, a male biology student in his early 20s with a stuck kidney stone, was being put under for surgery. Just as the anesthesiologist was pushing meds and telling me to count back from 100, I looked up at him in a drugged but focused gaze and said, "You're so pretty. You could be in movies." Then blackness. Anesthesiologist was like a grizzled 70-year-old hunched back looking guy with a lopsided grimace and more ear hair than head hair. Great doc though. Very last thing I remember hearing was your nurses cracking up laughing. It was a smallish medical community and I knew some of the people there, so as a joke somebody snuck his headshot into my chart. I like to think it was him gunning for a second career though. Edit, due to the rather sensitive nature of the surgery he hit me with a wallop of midazolam on the way into the OR, so I was already pretty juiced by the time they started. I had a similar experience during my first tympanoplasty. The doctor/surgeon was really attractive. I was a teenage girl. I jokingly called him Dr. A Hunk A to my mom during one of the pre-surgery appointments. It rhymed with his actual surname. Apparently one of the nurses overheard me. She literally waited until I was high as hell and waiting to be put under, and then asked me, "Hey, can I tell the other nurses what you call the doctor?" She didn't even have to tell them because I blurted out, "Yeah, he's super cute. Dr. A Hunk A," before passing out. Lol smiley face, that is spectacularly awesome. Go you. My personal story. When I had my wisdom teeth out, I kept holding a fake camera up to my face saying "you're beautiful" and making clicking noises while I was under. I'm a professional photographer and my dental surgeon ended up booking a session with me a year later. Never miss a chance to network. Your surgeon wanted more of those good vibes. Smiley face. Apparently, when I had surgery to remove my Bartholin's gland, A gland at the entrance of the vagina that can get an abscess. They asked me how I felt as soon as I was awake. I said I felt like I got fucked by an elephant and then I wanted to hug everyone. Wait, would you be willing to explain why you had to have surgery to remove this gland? This feels like something people should know about. I have had a vagina for a solid number of years and did not know that this was a thing. I'm glad you're okay. Sure. It's not rare, but folks don't often talk about it. I'd actually just gotten a divorce and I had my second ever sex partner. He was a player, F.U., Chris, dumped me via text because the novelty wore off. Chris had a chipped tooth, which I think led to a small cut, maybe? The right side of my vagina was just kind of raw feeling, like when you're getting a pimple. A few weeks after Chris proved himself to be a douche, that dull raw feeling had a bump on top. Like, the right side of my vaginal opening was just swollen a bit. I was terrified that I had an STD, so I got fully tested. Clean. Doctor said my Bartholin's gland was irritated and to put hot compresses on it. It just kept getting worse. Finally, it was like a boil and doctors explained, can either sew it open or remove the whole gland. I was grossed out by an open gland, and opted for removal. It's a gland that secretes lubrication, I believe. You have two of them. I have no recollection of this, but according to my mom, when she met me in the recovery room after wisdom tooth extraction, I was very eager to tell her something, but my mouth was full of gauze. So they gave me a pen and I wrote something on the surgical bib. Hours later, when I was back in reality, she asked me what was with the meow meows, my son. I had no idea what she was talking about, so she showed me the bib. It said meow 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 meow, the Meow Mix theme. This was stuck in my head for a good solid decade and now it's back, not that I'm complaining. My dad, after his second hip replacement, they were eating meatballs. After they'd been in a drawer, gross. Boy, that kid had a doughy rump. Coffee. 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 People say things funny. People say things funny at church. Coffee. Coffee. Cookies. He passed out after each of these. I had a guy, nefarious character, heavy drug use history, who got a bunch of ketamine, probably too much, in recovery from one of the other docs to help with severe pain after his abscess drainage. I was asked to check on him in an hour as the other doc had left for the evening. Went over and saw him in the OK hole drooling on himself but otherwise fine, so I left and came back an hour later. First thing he says to me is, "Why did you do that to me?" I asked him what he meant and he said, "You don't understand, I lived another man's life in there." I apologized and asked him, "How long do you think you were in there?" For reference, it had been something like an hour and a half or 2 hours since his trip began. "I don't know, maybe 30 years." I was speechless. I apologized again, made sure he knew he was safe, made sure he wasn't hurting, and made damn sure he knew it wasn't me that did it to him. TLDR, patient time traveled 30 years in the OK hole. I've heard of people who have dreams that are so vivid that they live entire lives in them. It fucks them up when they wake up because they have memories of their kids who were never real. This happened to me. In my dream I was the opposite sex. My dream mother also died and that was really hard. I felt really weird for a few days. Now it just seems crazy. I've told this here before, but maybe 4 months after getting out of an abusive marriage I had surgery for a bad hernia, had it for years but my ex always put barriers in the way of getting it fixed. Post-surgery I was in recovery and all of the nurses were joking about which Hogwarts house they would be in. I piped up my ex-wife thought I was a house elf. And drifted back under to lots of laughter. I once came out of anesthesia after an endoscopy, which can cause you to burp pretty much the whole day, and my fiancée asked, "How are you doing?" I misheard and answered as though she said, "What are you doing?" My answer was little burps, said very confidently. I also started crying on the way home because I wanted one egg. I never crave eggs. Is it common to get sedated for an endoscopy in the US? I had mine fully awake. They sprayed my throat with a numbing spray and told me not to swallow my saliva because I could choke. I replied, "Got it." And proceeded to immediately choke on my saliva, lol. Kind of on topic, when my mom woke up after having a stroke, the doctor asked if she recognized the people in the room. She got my sister's name right, called me my brother's name, and smiled real big at my stepdad and called him asshole. My dad and several others do that all the time and none of them had a stroke. My mom calls me by our dog's name all the time. Upside down face. My parents go through the whole cycle of siblings and dogs before getting to my name. Was he an asshole? Doctor, yep, she's going to be okay. Not an anesthesiologist, but a story from my mom about me. While I was under, I had a double jaw surgery scheduled for April 21, 2016. The procedure was fine. I remember waking up halfway through it and getting more anesthesia. After the surgery ended, they put me into the hospital room to let the drugs wear off of me. I don't remember much of this time, so this comes from my mom, but she was sitting in the room with me, watching the news on the TV. I wake up and I'm quiet for a little bit before I start sobbing. My mom thinks it's because my mouth hurts. My mouth is wired shut, so I actively can't correct her with words, and have to try and write out, on paper, what I'm crying about. The news was broadcasting about Prince's death, and I was hysterical over the fact that I apparently killed Prince and that I had to turn myself in. I was working when I got a text from my little sister. "I'm sorry, your husband is dead." She lives in Florida, me, Arizona. I got married recently and she's never talked to my husband. I was so busy at the time, but had to stop and was freaking out. Text her back, "What?" She said, "Prince is dead. I was in love with him my whole life. But I was thinking my real husband was dead." I still cried, though. How about the other way around? I took my mom for her surgery on her right shoulder, and her anesthesiologist was this very dignified, solemn older Persian gentleman. My mom told him, "Just so you know, I wrote directions on myself to make sure you get it right." She was joking around, but she actually does this. Old battle-axe nurse habits die hard. He looked her straight in the eye and said deadpan, "Great. So let's get started on your left knee." Totally got her. It was great. Patient here. Came out of anesthesia and heard Gaudier's Somebody That I Used to Know playing in the recovery room. I asked my significant other why they were playing it at like 10x the normal speed, and the nurse just goes, "Okay, so she's not ready to go home yet, lol." LOL, is that a thing? I guess your perception must be so delayed or intermittent that it plays fast in your mind. A friend of mine was doing a type of spine procedure where they fixed part of a broken vertebrae under sedation. He said most people fall right asleep, but every now and then someone just won't fall asleep no matter how much for anesthesia they get. This guy that he was doing the procedure on got so talkative that he was just going on and on about his favorite fishing spots while he was having his broken vertebra fixed. My friend kept asking him if he was in pain or anything, but the guy was like, "I don't feel anything." Anyways, let me tell you about this place I bass fish. Guy had the whole procedure awake despite lots of anesthesia and was happy as a clam. This guy I was dating, he asked me to take him to get his wisdom teeth removed. He told me that anesthesia doesn't affect him a lot and we were supposed to go on a road trip the next day. So anyway, he gets wheeled out of the dentist by an old nurse. I'm behind the driver's seat and I see him smacking his lips looking up at the sky. She opens my car door and he said, "I love her, I love her." He then proceeded to ask me to marry him several times. He tried to pull out his gauze and I told him stop, and he said, "Man, this bitch is bossy." Then he wanted a milkshake. I would suggest a place and he would scream no. Finally we agree on a place and he tells me he'll give me directions. I drive for 15 minutes before I ask him what we're doing and he said he has no idea. We're in the drive-thru and he says, "I have something for you." I swear I thought he had bought me a ring the way he had been proposing for last hour. It was his newly extracted teeth. "They let me keep them. I want you to have them." He lived on base at the time and was yelling at the gate while they checked his ID for them to hurry UPPP. I finally get him to his room, in bed. He's happily eating his milkshake with a spoon. His mouth was a mess of blood and milkshake. He asked me for a kiss. I gave him a peck. We're married now. Edit. Wow. Thanks for all the love, y'all. He's just as sweet when he's not sedated too, so I'm a lucky girl. Ah, so you accepted his teeth proposal. A wise choice. Other girls, come on. Show us the ring. You/fishbait 333, holds up hand to show engagement ring made of wisdom teeth. They came from Jared. I was told after surgery I said I love dogs and I want to eat the Taliban. At least you said it correctly. My aunt, who notoriously despises fast food, old Mexican lady whose food is as good as it gets, woke up and looked at my uncle and said, "Are you the sexy man that's gonna take me to McDonald's?" If you knew her you would know that she would never say that. She has never lived it down. Did the sexy man get her some McDonald's? My husband woke up from anesthesia after a colonoscopy just after the doctor walked in. He didn't see the doctor and told me no blowjob for you, then fell back asleep and ripped a big fart. The doctor looked at me and busted out laughing. He said not to be embarrassed, people say the weirdest things but this one he'd remember. If you liked the video, hit that subscribe button for more content. I post every day and I'll see you next time with more stories.